Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? It's time to react to NFL Week 6, College Football Week 7. The Lions destroy the Cowboys. Is it too little too late for the Jets after they trade for Davante Adams? Two number one overall picks are going in opposite directions. The game of the year in college football absolutely lived up to the hype. What a weekend of football. A lot to get to today. But joining me, of course, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
You know, Brad, a lot going on this weekend. I know you were out of town in a fun place that a lot of us love to visit. But there was some really good football on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got a lot to cover. I was in Vegas over the weekend. I think I told you guys on the pod. Maybe it was might have been on the YouTube podcast. I mentioned I was going to be in Vegas. Went and saw the Steelers and Raiders game. Alex, that was my first Steelers home game. So that was a lot of fun, all kidding aside. It was ridiculous. Anybody that caught that game on TV or was possibly at that game, the Steeler fans absolutely took over that stadium. It was insane. It was probably, realistically, Alex, it was probably 85% Steeler fans. I have never seen anything like that with an away team just taking over a stadium. Now, I know the Chargers deal with this a lot, especially when they play the 49ers or one of the quote-unquote bigger brands. They tend to get really overtaken by the away team. But this was crazy, just how many Steelers fans were in attendance at this game. At one point, TJ Watt was asking the crowd to get pumped up when the players raise their arms up, try to get the crowd involved. On the road, TJ Watt is getting the crowd pumped up. That's how crazy this was. So we've got a lot to get to, Alex. Now, one interesting move that happened, of course, recently, Davante Adams, we all know by now, he gets traded to the Jets. Look, this was probably one of the most predictable NFL trades ever. The Jets passing game desperately needed another playmaker, so they bring over Adams. I think he has that built-in chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, of course. They should hit the ground running in New York. They had to do this because, quite frankly, Alex, I think the season was getting away from this team. And after that loss to the Bills on Monday Night Football, look, I didn't understand firing Saul 5 weeks in. I didn't necessarily agree with it. But I do applaud the Jets for being aggressive and making this move.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, the only thing I can say is exactly what I've been saying for the past few weeks, that it's going to be a third round. He's not going to get a first or second in the middle of the season. It needed to happen in the offseason if you wanted to maximize that. Unfortunately, they did not. So you deal with what you got. And I think it's a good trade for the Jets, and I think it's a good trade for the Raiders.
Yeah, the question now is it too little too late? And with the rough start they've had to the season here, is Davante Adams going to give this team enough juice on offense to get them over the hump and get this team kind of rolling and getting back in the right direction? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of kind of dysfunction around this team right now. They don't look as good as we expected. Now, Aaron Rodgers probably had his best game as a Jet on Monday night, but it still wasn't enough. This is going to be fascinating. I understand the move. I applaud them. Like I said, I think they had to make this move. And for Jets fans, hopefully it gives them a spark here on the offensive side of the ball. Now, the Bills obviously played the Jets on Monday. They get the win, but they made a pretty aggressive move, and they go and acquire Amari Cooper to try to bolster their wide receiver room. Alex, what do you think of this move by the Bills? I think they needed a true number 2 receiver here. They needed to add a proven pass catcher to this offense.
Well, the first thing it tells me is that the Bills are going to try and make a push here with, I guess, how bad the Jets have been looking. I like the move for them. I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. Should you have just kind of sat still for a moment and take a breather? But I don't believe they're in the Super Bowl bubble on offense or defense. And neither one of those look elite. I've said last week a couple of weeks ago when they faced the Ravens, they're not tough. So this is kind of a mid move for me. It'll keep them competitive and perhaps try and get into the playoffs and perhaps make a run. But I don't think this really puts them in the Super Bowl bubble. I believe they're still sitting out of it. And if we think that Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams connection is going to be back, they possibly may not make the playoffs either way, even with this trade. And Amari Cooper, as a Raider fan, I've had him, and I've seen him. He disappears in big games. So when you're going to be looking for a big game from this guy, he is not going to be present.
Yeah, on the other side, quickly, before we get into these other games, Alex, I think it tells me from the Browns standpoint, they're waving the white flag. And clearly the fact that they're sellers this time of year, getting rid of one of their best offensive weapons tells me this team realizes, look, they're not going anywhere fast. Now, I've got some thoughts about the Eagles later on in the podcast we'll get to. Obviously, they beat the Browns on Sunday.
Exactly. And I think an incoming YouTube stitch about the Browns is going to be happening soon.
All right, PGF Nation, stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel because we're putting out exclusive content over there. We've got short form videos. We've got some longer podcast episodes, been previewing games, making betting picks, a lot of fun stuff over there. So be sure to check it out if you haven't already. Now, Lions embarrass the Cowboys 47-9, Alex. This was absolutely crazy. Now, we took the Lions in this game. We thought this was going to be a tough matchup for the Cowboys, but man, I didn't think it was going to look like this. Cowboys, look, they're not a good football team. I know that's not the most in-depth analysis here, but they're just not. Now, look, Detroit, they're a good football team, and they legit could win the whole thing. I think they're in that group of teams that you could circle and say, look, this team could win the Super Bowl at the end of the year. Now, the defense for the Cowboys is really just bad. They don't tackle well. They're sloppy. This, to me, Alex, is the start of the slide that, quite frankly, we predicted in the offseason. They made the mistake that we said they shouldn't make, and that was extending Dak Prescott. He threw a pick in the end zone, threw another pick in this game. Look, he was terrible, and he really hasn't been good this year. And I think that last-minute drive against Pittsburgh kind of just put deodorant on a player that stinks because he hasn't been good all year. He gets this big contract. And look, it's not going to get any better, Cowboys fans. I'm sorry to break that to you. It's not going to get better because, like we talked about this offseason, you can't build a roster around him. I mean, really, unless they crush nearly every draft pick the next 3 years, this team is in serious trouble. And when you look at the 49ers, the Packers, the Vikings, I mean, heck, even Washington and maybe even the Bears, those teams are all better than Dallas right now in the NFC.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with Dallas. And I can't believe, Brad, you missed the biggest story of that Dallas game is that it was on Jerry Jones' birthday. So happy birthday, Jerry Jones. So I like you said, I mean, it was a complete thrashing, 1,000 licks for everything that was just wrong with Dallas coming into this game. It was set up for this. But like Brad said, it's not going to get better. They go into a bye week. They're at San Francisco. Then they're at Atlanta. Then they're home to Philly. Then they're home to Houston. And then they're at the Commanders. These next 5 games, we're gonna know before Thanksgiving if they should start networks should start opting out of Cowboy games and putting up other games because this is not going to go well. And even if you want to finish out Cincinnati, they have Cincinnati, then Tampa Bay, then Philly, and they finish the season with Washington. So this team really could truly only end up with like 6 to 7 wins at the most. Just looking at how the schedule. How many
wins right there? 2?
Okay, so let's talk about. I think they could get swept in 5 games straight. I know it's not likely, but they could, and they'll play Philly at home. But they could beat the Giants. They'll beat Carolina, and they'll beat Carolina. So I only see 2 more. Actually, that's 5-12. If I just do those 2 wins right there, so really 5-12.
That's when you said that, Alex. That's my first thought. As I was like, they probably go 1-4 in that 5-game stretch.
Right?
Maybe they win another one. That's it.
Yep.
For this team that's been winning 12 games every year and people thought was going to be, okay. I think a lot of people thought they'd be at least in the playoff mix again. Look, the wheels are coming off, Alex. And look, this Cowboys team, I think they peaked already.
Yeah.
That 12-win window that we saw where they were really competitive last few years, and it kind of looked like, hey, this team could maybe make a run at it, and they never did. I think they peaked and it's over. And I said this all last offseason, I wouldn't pay Tua because of the health concerns, and I wouldn't pay Dak because you won't be able to build a roster around him. And quite frankly, he's not good enough to carry an average team. Now, look, a lot of quarterbacks aren't. So Dak's not alone there. I'm not trying to just, blatantly say the guy sucks or something, but he just isn't. He needs a really good team around him. And even with some really great teams, he's come up light. There's two ways to win in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks specifically here. You find a star quarterback and you pay him like one, or you hit on a rookie quarterback and you buy a team to put around him while he's on a rookie deal. The worst thing you can do is get a B minus quarterback and pay him like an A quarterback, and they just did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to wrap up on the Cowboys side, I mean, like I said before, once you sign this deal, Cowboy fans, you can no longer complain. You have tied yourself to who this guy is. And I think Dak is a really, really good quarterback in the regular season now. And the playoffs will have to look at each game to kind of see what happened in those games. But during the regular season, he's a guy, they call him the Black Kirk Cousins. Perhaps he is, just more high production in terms of that. But like I said before, I would more than likely have let Dak go, and I would have built a team, and I would have been maybe 10 wins or whatever that is going forward. But I just did not see putting this much money. You can't build a team. But I'll say this to end this about the Dallas, because I have a point to make about Detroit. Dallas has to start doing things differently. They rely entirely too much on the draft. They do not sign, and was brought up to me, shout out to Sports Narrative people, it was brought up to me that they do not sign major free agents. The last one they signed was 2015, I think, was Brandon Carr. When Derrick Henry shows up and says, I want to play for you, and essentially you opted out of Derrick Henry to sign Ezekiel Elliott, we knew what this season is going to be. So nobody should be complaining about what they are right now. This is what you want to do with your money, so this is what you did. Quickly on Detroit, this running game has been looking like I thought it would look. And what I will say is Jameson Williams, if he continue and can string some games together, because he's kind of been hit and miss, but better this year, if he can string some of these games together and be consistent, we're going to be looking and talking about this team as a Super Bowl caliber team. And even bringing over Tim Patrick from Denver. So now you have your X, your Y, and your Z with Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have all of those things covered, and you have a tight end in Sam Laporta. Now, we do have to mention that injury to Aiden Hutchinson is a huge, huge blow.
Massive.
It's gruesome. If you want to care to take a look at it on Twitter or wherever you can see, it's gruesome. So he's gone for the season. It's a broken leg. The one move I would make, and it's been all over the place, but I know myself and Brad have been talking about it. You have to get on the phone to the Jets right now and get Hassan Reddick in the building, because you're in the Super Bowl bubble, and we know you could be in it one year and out of it the next year. This is your chance to make a run. You need to push all the chips to the table, and get this guy in your building. Yannick Ngakoue was a guy you could have gotten. He's gone to the Ravens. He is the only guy that's available. And I saw the Jets today say that he can go seek a trade. The Detroit Lions should be all over. If you have to even give up a third-round pick because he's getting out of there, if you have to give up a third round, so what? So be it. You're in the Super Bowl bubble. You have to go for it all right here. San Francisco is down. We don't know what Minnesota is. We don't know what the Bucs will look like. And nobody and Jaden Daniels is a rookie. You can really be the class of the NFC and run the table, have home field advantage, and really make a true Super Bowl run, which is something those fans deserve.
Yeah, I'll give you another name, and I don't care if it takes 2 first-round picks to get him. I would pick up the phone and call the Raiders on Max Crosby. You got to make a move. I like what you said about Hassan Reddick. I think that makes total sense. But if you really want to get aggressive, I think you at least make that phone call to the Raiders. 2 teams this weekend, Alex, that – look, I would actually consider they had a good loss. Now, look, people hate that term, good loss. I get it. There's really no such thing as a good loss. But there's 2 teams that I think of that I thought really showed me something even in a loss. And that was the Washington Commanders and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, look, we'll get to our college football takeaways in a bit. But I want to start with Washington because they were impressive in this game. In a loss, of course, to the Ravens. But look, the Ravens are one of the best teams in the NFL. They're a legit Super Bowl contender. This is a veteran team with veteran coaches and veteran players all over the field. I thought the Ravens, quite frankly, would roll the Commanders in this game. But look, hats off to Jane Daniels. Hats off to this Washington team. They played this team tough. They stayed in this game. And even in a loss, I think it's a litmus test to really how good this team is already.
And it's something we talked about with Jane Daniels since the beginning of the season. Poise. This was hostile territory. The battle basically for Maryland, even though Washington is Washington, but they, this is the DMV, the battle for the DMV, let's call it that. So these fans are all in close proximity to each other. He went into that stadium not scared of anything and trying to make every play possible. Now, we know the biggest issue here was their run game, and which is something the reason I picked the Ravens to win, because I thought that they would be able to keep Jaden Daniels in tow and not let him get loose and do destruction with his legs, similar to what Lamar Jackson has done for his entire career. One of the things I like to point out with Jaden Daniels, the touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin inside the red zone, that was an option route. I saw Terry McLaurin talking about it. He said, I told Jaden, I got this guy on his heels. He said, if I see him open his hips, he says, throw me a fade. If not, throw the slant. And it was a beautiful pass. It was an off pass in terms of it should have been a fade route, but he instead threw a back shoulder, which McLaurin made a great adjustment to catch the touchdown. When you start seeing things like that and you walk into your film on Monday, you have a big smile on your face knowing that, you know what? We feel that we found our guy. It's still early in the season, but we feel that we found our guy. On the Ravens side, Derrick Henry doing Derrick Henry-like things. Another 24 carries, like I said. Some of these games, you're going to have to give him 25 carries, and this was one of those games. They did that. Lamar used his legs. I think it was about a 36 or 34-yard critical run that he had. Zay Flowers was the player of the game. He was literally all over the place. They could not cover him on crosses, on stunts, on bang eights. There was nothing they could do with Zay Flowers all day long. I felt like he was just flashing across. I saw his number flash, number 4 flash across my screen every time I turned to that game. But like you said, I came away more impressed with the Commanders. Not that the Ravens weren't impressive, but I came away more impressed with the Commanders and Jaden Daniels, his poise in that hostile territory. That lets me know in big games, this guy is going to be a gamer.
Now, speaking of rookie quarterbacks, Caleb Williams and the Bears, hanging 35 points on the Jaguars. Look, the Jaguars are a mess. Don't get me wrong. This team has been terrible. They've been a big disappointment. Trevor, let's face it, he's a bust at this point. I think I've seen enough here. This is not where they expected to be with Trevor Lawrence in year 4. This is absolutely, they thought when they drafted this guy, they thought, okay, year 3, year 4, this is when it should really be coming together for this young guy, and they should be in the Super Bowl mix, and they aren't even close right now. Now, on the Bears side, this team, quite frankly, is ahead of schedule, and Caleb Williams is going to be a star in this league. There is no doubt about it at this point. I said it during our NFL draft coverage. He's a generational talent, even though PGF Nation, you guys disagreed with me. I had that Twitter poll up this summer, got a lot of votes on that poll, and the majority of you guys voted that he would be a bust. So I'm just bringing that up, pointing the finger at you guys here. He looks better every single week. And we were just talking about Jaden Daniels. And look, as good as Jaden Daniels has been, and he's been great, I still wouldn't take him over Caleb Williams right now in a redraft. He was lights out on Sunday. I love what I've seen from this kid.
Yeah, well, the first thing we need to point out, just to go over the Jags are now 31st in defense. This is a team whose defense got a lot better. You started to see the number 1 pick, Trayvon Walker, look really good. Josh Allen finally exploded and looked a lot more consistent. And I mentioned it in the offseason on the pod, and I said they fired the entire defensive staff. This goes along with the malfunction, or rather dysfunction, of Trent Baalke. It's something that I mentioned when they were looking for their head coach, Brad, a few years ago when we were talking about it. And I said when Byron Leftwich wanted to come there, but he didn't want to work with Trent Baalke. There is dysfunction brewing. It's about to go off the rails. I can see both Trent Baalke as well as Doug Peterson being gone at the end of this season. So this is going to be a completely different looking team because obviously they've tied themselves to Trevor Lawrence for the rest of his career. Now, I will say in this game, and I know we talked about in pre-production, Brad, but there were two definite drop passes, touchdown passes by Brian Thomas, as well as their free agent pickup, Gabe Davis. But on the other side of that, the Chicago defense doing what they do. Thank you for the 20 points in fantasy. And Caleb, the 4 touchdowns. And once again, looking at the second level in Cole Kmet and finding him 5 catches for 70 yards, 2 TDs. Again, now your slot guy, Keenan Allen, 5 catches, 41, 2 TDs. And then fitting in the other guys. Roma Dunzier had 40. DJ Moore only had 20. But the running game, once again, 152 yards. And let's pay attention to Caleb Williams beginning to use his legs. 4 carries for 56 yards. This guy is a mobile quarterback. And if he starts to put that together, they're going to be scary. And don't look now. Every single team in the NFC North has a winning record.
Yeah, absolutely the most surprising division of football right now. The Vikings were on a bye, of course, 6 weeks in every team is it not only a winning record, but at least 2 games over 500. Been a lot of fun. Let's stick with that division, though, Alex, because the Packers smashed what I'm seeing as a very undisciplined Cardinals team, 34-13. They moved to 4-2. Just like I said about the Cowboys a minute ago, the Cardinals just aren't a good football team. Look, the defense is terrible. We knew that coming into the year, this was going to be a weakness. They haven't improved at all. You really can't trust Kyler Murray. He's been inconsistent, and quite frankly, so has this team. Now, the Packers, statistically speaking, they're not a great defense, but man, this team creates turnovers and they make big plays when it matters. They lead the NFL in takeaways. Jordan Love, in his 3rd game back from injury, is starting to look like he's starting to find his rhythm a little bit here. He torched this Arizona team, and this Packers team is a team to circle right now, Alex.
We were high on the Packers once Jordan Love became a starter. We saw this. We were a year early, but they're now starting to heat back up now that Jordan Love is back in tow. But before I finish with them, Arizona, they're going to have to make some tough decisions, and one of them is going to be about Kyler Murray. Now, that contract only just kicked in a year ago, so they have a lot to think about. And I won't get too in depth in terms of what their salary cap looks like, but they may have to make the nuclear decision, as I said, with Denver, in trading Kyler Murray and moving on from him. Again, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's too short. If he's 6 feet, this looks completely different to me. And the other part of Kyler Murray, he's not using his legs either. So I'm not sure what they're gonna have some tough decisions to make. But on the Green Bay Packers, let's talk about some rookies popping up and doing some things, specifically on the defense. Javon Bullard out of Georgia was all over the place. Amari Cooper, a guy that we spoke about during the draft, that was going to be a guy out of Texas A&M. That's a guy that can move all around that field. This defense is young. Nobody's due a contract. They already have their quarterback in tow. This team is going to get scary as they go. And the game that we're going to have to eventually circle at some point in time is when Green Bay takes on the Vikings.
Man, a lot of blowouts on Sunday, Alex. Very uncharacteristic of the NFL to have this many games that were lopsided. We rarely see this, but man, we had a lot of teams that just were clicking, and the Bucs were one of them. They destroyed the Saints. Look, Baker Mayfield and offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, I think they clearly have something here, Alex. He shredded this Saints defense. This defense came into this game as the best red zone defense in the NFL. Pretty impressive stuff. Now, granted, he did have 3 picks early in this game, made some bad decisions. I'm not going to just excuse that, of course, but overall, I thought he was pretty sharp. They moved the ball all over this defense. And on a side note here, and I think I said this other week, Alex, I have won so much money betting this Bucs team every single week. They are so undervalued in the betting market. It's absolutely crazy. That's just a betting side note for you guys. But yeah, the Bucs continue to impress. They are absolutely going to be in the mix in that division because they are a tough out week in and week out.
I'll start with the Saints because Spencer Rattler flashed. And that second quarter, because they were down, 24-20 or whatever. They were down, I believe, 24-0 or maybe 17-0. Spencer Rattler heated up in that second quarter and They scored 27 points. Now, Baker helped with some of his turnovers, but they had a non-existent running game, so this was all on the arm of Spencer Rattler going up and down the field, putting them into scoring position. So I do want to shout out Spencer Rattler, first start, Derek Carr out. He did flash, and that's what you want from a guy that was drafted in the 5th round, but was a highly touted high school prospect coming out of high school and going into college. But that second quarter, if you want to know what Spencer Rattler's about, go take a look at that second quarter. But to your point about the Bucs fight, nothing but fight. Baker Mayfield and his teammates love their quarterback. And Baker Mayfield is tough. He's starting to show the grit that we saw from him in college, starting also to show some of that pinpoint accuracy, which is why I had him as the number 1 quarterback over Sam Darnold in that draft. And Chris Godwin was all over the place. I mean, if you were playing fantasy, everybody should know against the Saints, you sit Mike Evans because he never does anything against Lattimore. But Chris Godwin, and it was a poor showing on that 55-yard touchdown run, poor tackling. No one wanted to tackle Chris Godwin all day long, and he was able to get loose and do some things. So great grit, and he threw 3 interceptions, so he still fought through that because coming out of halftime, this was a 27-24 game. This was not a blowout, and really until the 4th quarter. And I say it before, I'll say it again. I told everybody from a fantasy alert standpoint that Bucky Irving would be taking over that starting job from Rashard Wright. And even though Sean Tucker, a rookie, had a good game, but Bucky Irving is going to be the guy. He showed a lot of wiggle in the running game, and he showed a lot of wiggle in the passing game. He is going to, if they can get a running game, because for the past previous 2 years, they've been last in about maybe 70 to 75 yards a game in rushing. If they put together the rushing game to go along with what Baker's doing, this is a team that can upset somebody in the playoffs.
At this point with the Saints, before we move on quickly here, if I'm the Saints, Alex, do you bench Derek Carr and say, look,
yes,
let's move on with the kid? I think so. I think, look, you're not going anywhere. It's clearly gone off the rails for this team. You mentioned we saw some flashes from Rattler. We know they're going to have to rebuild next season anyway. Why not get the rebuild started now and see what you have with this kid?
And they should also be sellers. Alvin Kamara should be taking phone calls on Alvin Kamara right now.
Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. Eagles, look, they get the win. But Alex, I still have some major question marks around this team. That Browns team is garbage. Look, they might be the worst team in the league. I'm not even kidding. Carolina included here. Eagles coming off of a bye, so they have extra time to prepare for this game. Both their top wide receivers are back, and the offense continues to struggle. They haven't scored a point in the first quarter all season. That's the only team in the NFL that can say that. And look, first quarter opening drives, that's when you're in the script, guys. That's when most teams are their sharpest. That's when you get those layup touchdowns, the gimmies, right? That's when you're supposed to be at your best, and this team has nothing. Jalen Hurts continues to regress, and I don't care what their record is. I really don't. They aren't that good. And quite frankly, they're lucky they were playing the Browns on Sunday because they probably got beat by just about anybody else.
They don't look like the team that they were. What was it? I guess we could say 2 years ago when they were in the when they were in the Super Bowl. I don't think Jalen Hurts has regressed. I just think Jalen Hurts has now been showing us who Jalen Hurts really is, which is which when you're at the head of the table, you're always going to get the blame whether it's your fault or not. You mentioned Kellen Moore. I was actually talking earlier today about Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is a very good defensive coordinator. I thought the defense would be a little bit better and that he would be able to work with this style of defense. And when I say this style, Vic Fangio throughout his career has been a primarily 3-4 defensive coordinator, and he's now coaching a 4-3, and they don't have any linebackers, and there's a bunch of young rookies in the defensive backfield, so there's some confusion going on there. But they just don't look cohesive, and I don't know who or what Nick Sirianni was doing between what he did during the game and then what he did using his child basically as a shield in the presser. I'm confused on what's going on there. I don't have any thoughts on the Browns. They should be sellers as well. But as far as Philly goes, they have to do something about this head coach. They should. I was very confused in the offseason. Philly's usually a team that makes a lot of smart moves, especially with Howie there. Holding on to Nick Sirianni made absolutely no sense to me when there was already smoke in the city. You should have gotten rid of him and brought in a guy. So I don't know. One of my hot takes is going to be Bill Belichick to Philly in the offseason.
Well, it is somewhat of a hot take, but what's not a hot take is Sirianni's gone. I don't think it matters unless this team goes on some kind of miracle run here and wins the Super Bowl. Anything short of that, and I think this guy's pretty much gone. I think nothing about him says head coach. Now, before we get to college football here, I want to get your thoughts really quick on what did you think of Drake May getting his first start? I thought he really flashed on Sunday, Alex. Now, he ran a nice 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, had that 40-yard touchdown pass. We saw his mobility on display, even with some rookie mistakes. And look, he had the pick and the fumble. And, there were some plays where he looked like a rookie. But I think if you're a Patriots fan, you've got to be excited from what you saw from this kid, especially against a good Texans defense, one of the best defensive minds in the game. In game one, to go out there and flash like that, I think they've got to be excited about what they saw in Drake May.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from Drake May throughout the game. I always expect mistakes to happen, especially when you're the leading passer and leading rusher. Again, they had no running game. So this game was really going to be all on his arm. Kayshon Boutte, a guy coming out of LSU that there was a lot of hype about, but I think he got injured. That was his best throw. That touchdown pass was right over the linebackers, right towards the back of the end zone where only Boutte could make the catch. So I thought that was his best throw of the game. But he spread the ball around. Demario Davis, Kayshon Boutte, Hunter Henry, a couple of dump offs to the running backs when necessary. I liked what I saw from him. I'm hoping that they can get Javon Baker involved more because that's a guy that I like that they drafted as well. I think they have a lot of young rookies on this team that can grow together, and you can pick and choose which ones you want to keep, because obviously you can't keep everybody. On the Houston side, Everything was good on the Houston side. Great route by Stephon Diggs on Christian Gonzalez. I just wanted to mention that because I love Christian Gonzalez. But Drake May, I really liked what I saw from him, getting mobile, using his legs, and making a lot of reads. And even though some of them went inaccurate, he made a lot of good reads. And we can always fix and calm you down to get your feet set and to make the right throws. But he made a lot of good reads on Sunday.
Yeah, he was a guy during the draft covers we talked about, high ceiling prospect, but he was a little bit more of a developmental prospect. We talked about guys like Jaden Daniels and even to a lesser degree, a guy like Bo Nix and Michael Penix, because they had so much more experience, so much more starting experience. We kind of expected those guys to be able to hit the ground running a lot quicker than a guy like Drake May, but I think we both agreed we really liked the upside and the potential of Drake May, which is probably part of the reason why he wasn't starting at the beginning of the year. But I think at this point, it was time to see what they have with this kid, kind of get him going. And I don't know if the Texans was necessarily the best spot to pick his first start, but either way, I like what I saw from the kid. I'm going to be excited to see start number 2.
And Brad, before you move on, we're going to have another YouTube. I like plugging the YouTube. We're going to have a YouTube short on Anthony Richardson coming soon. We don't have to talk about the game, but we need to have a conversation about him.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Another developmental guy that might be going in the other direction. Oregon, Ohio State, Alex, this game lived up to the hype. It is absolutely the game of the year so far. Back and forth game, start to finish. We had great plays, great play calls, great players. I mean, you want to talk about NFL players all over the field in this game. Both teams made some mistakes in this game, but I want to kind of look at the big picture here. These are two of the best teams in the country, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think both these teams showed us on Saturday they could absolutely win the whole thing. And this is a massive win for Dan Lanning. He really lacked a signature win at Oregon, even though he's had a lot of success so far with the Ducks. This was the signature win that he really needed to put on his resume. But Alex, let's get to what everyone is talking about, because Dan Lanning decided to put a 12th player on the field on the defensive side of the ball in the final seconds on purpose. And this is all over the internet if you guys haven't seen this already. Unlike the NFL, in college football, they don't reset the game clock to where it was before the penalty. So Lanning essentially traded a 5-yard penalty in the final seconds of this game to burn 4 precious seconds off the clock. Now, some people are being really critical of this decision by Lanning. I think it was absolutely brilliant. Look, to me, this is no different than when a cornerback gets burnt on a deep ball. You get burnt on a deep ball and they decide to grab and take down a wide receiver for an obvious pass interference call instead of giving up a potential, 60, 65-yard touchdown. Look, is it manipulating the rules? Yeah, you could say that, but it's a smart play. And I thought it was a brilliant play by Lanning. Bill Belichick is a guy that used to find loopholes like this. And I'm sure you remember this, Alex. If you guys remember when he ran the clock out on consecutive delay of game penalties on a punt, this was like, 2000 or 2020, I think, 2019. They were playing the Jets, and he runs out the clock for consecutive delay game penalties to beat them and kill extra clock. Look, anything that gets you an edge, I love it. It's not breaking the rules. It's finding a loophole. I thought it was brilliant. And in a huge moment of a huge game, I think it really showed just how sharp this coach really is.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, shades of Bill Belichick. I'll give you another one that I love. The wiping down of the eligible receiver. If you're not paying attention, when a referee goes over to a play, I'm not sure if it's still in the game, and he wipes down the lineman, that's another sign for an eligible receiver, another Bill Belichick special. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. People complain about it. Listen, if the rules are the rules, if you play, you walk right up to the edge of the line of rules and don't jump. That's how you play the game. That's how you get the edge. And this is a game that you needed edge. It was 31-32. So any edge you could get, you go and get. And that's literally the play of the game. And quite frankly, he might be my helmet sticker guy tomorrow when we talk about our players of the game. But in terms of the game, like you said, a lot of back and forth. You see two quarterbacks that could possibly be, I'll say second to fourth round picks, and Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel doing their thing. Trayvon Henderson, like you said, NFL players all over the field. But I did pick Oregon to win, and they did. But the one thing that I'll say that I did not like happened on Sunday when they moved Ohio down to 4, where I thought perhaps Oregon and Ohio State should just flip-flop spots, where Oregon moving up to 2 and Ohio State moving down to 3. I know Penn State is undefeated, but this was a 1-point game. The Buckeyes should still be number 3.
I don't know if it's a big deal, but I actually thought when the rankings came out, I thought Oregon should jump to number 1. And look, Texas has been great. I'll talk about them in a second, but Oregon has 2 wins over top 25 teams. Texas has 1. Oregon has wins over 2 top 20 teams. They have a win over a top 5 team. If you look at strength of schedule, Oregon has played the 35th strength of schedule. Texas is 82nd. Strength of record, Oregon is 1st and Texas is 6th. So you could really make a strong case here after this win. Oregon probably should have jumped to number 1. I don't think it's that big of a deal, and obviously that's not a shot at Texas. I think Texas has been absolutely awesome, of course, this year as well. But what a game. I mean, what a game that was. That was absolutely the game of the weekend. Now, I've got some thoughts on some other college football teams because speaking of the college football playoff, Arizona State, don't look now, but they're 5-1, and they have been a sneaky 5-1, Alex, and they played like a college football playoff contender, got a big upset win over number 16 Utah. Look, Kenny Dillingham, the former Oregon offensive coordinator, he has this program going in the right direction right now, and the stats aren't going to blow you away. But I like what I've seen from their freshman quarterback, Sam Leavitt. I thought this kid really showed me something. I really like his game. Now, Cam Rising, obviously Utah's quarterback, clearly wasn't ready to come back from that injury. I think it was a mistake starting him. He just did not look right. He wasn't moving well. He wasn't throwing the ball well. So not making any excuses for Utah. It was a great win by Arizona State, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Arizona State's running back. I just like saying his name, Cam Scatabo. But yeah, you're absolutely right about Utah and Cam Rising, a team that I thought with their offensive and defensive line height and strength that they would be able to do some things. But Cam Rising, what is this, his 7th year, I think? I know he was trying to get drafted and put himself in position, but you need to rest and perhaps maybe start working on your NFL career, and they need to go younger here. And it's okay that you can. It's fine. You've done your due diligence with this player, and you're not winning. You need to move off of him. But Arizona State, interesting watch, interesting team, and they're young.
Now, halfway into year 3 at USC for Lincoln Riley, and look, the Trojans, quite frankly, are starting to look just like another team. And Trojan fans and that LA market, I'm telling you, they're starting to lose patience with Lincoln Riley at this point. The Trojans lost 5 of their last 6 games to end the regular season last year. Now they're 1-3 in the Big Ten to start the season. They have got to find ways to finish games because they have had leads in these games. They're not hanging on to them, and these are big losses that are starting to pile up for this team. And look, we know how good this coach has been. We know what his track record's been, but it's not going the direction they thought it would. This was supposed to be the guy here that you plug into this sleeping giant on the West Coast, and they were supposed to be right back in the college football playoff mix, and they don't look like they're going to make it this year, not with the way things are going. They'd have to make some kind of incredible run at this point. And look, for Lincoln Riley, it's not the Big 12 anymore. And maybe this guy, quite frankly, was overrated, Alex, because last year the Pac-12 was loaded. We saw arguably the best season ever out of that conference. And we know how good the Big Ten is. And here's USC and Lincoln Riley, and they're struggling.
Yeah, and I just took a look as you were talking about it. I wanted to look at the football commits coming in next year. So they have a top 10 class coming in next year, led by Jerome Miles, wide receiver. That's the only 5-star. Then they have Julian Lewis, a quarterback coming in that's a 4-star. I won't go further than that because, Lincoln Riley is an offensive guy, and this is supposed to be his forte. He's bringing in these offensive weapons to do a lot of things that need to be done. But it will start to heat up a little bit more. I mean, I think in the entire area, if they stop getting guys from that area, it's going to even get louder. But I think he's going to at least get 2 more years to see what he can do and what he can build now that they're in the Big Ten. I think they're going to stick with him for a minimum of 2 more years before it really starts to get hot, and he's going to have to the school and AD are going to have to make some decisions.
Alex, what a crushing loss for Ole Miss at LSU. The Rebels never trailed in this game until the very end of overtime. That was tough. That was a really tough loss. And look, this Ole Miss team is starting to become one of those teams that might just end up being one of the more disappointing teams in college football this year. There was big expectations for this team, big expectations for Lane Kiffin and what he's done there. They had a lot of talent coming back, but it's not happening right now for Ole Miss. You cannot lose this game, and man, that was a tough pill to swallow for them on Saturday.
I, for the life of me, cannot understand why Brad keeps saying these are crushing losses for Ole Miss when these are great losses for B at Florida, because Lane Kiffin, the door is wide open. It's time. Come on. But yeah, I actually watched a lot of this game, and there was a big play by Ole Miss, and now it escapes me, and I'm mad I didn't think about it before we started talking about this game. There was a couple of drops, and I actually was I was taking a second look at Jackson Dart, saying, is he a guy? Could he be a guy that develops in the NFL, similar to how we were talking about Spencer Rattler later? I don't know. We can get into that later, but a game that, from what I looked at, Ole Miss kind of had it in hand, and Nussmeier, I do not like that guy, but Nussmeier he just didn't look great. He wasn't sharp early on, but as this game went on, and as you saw, Ole Miss crumbled, and they brought out the stars for LSU. Shaq was on the sideline. I think everybody was anybody that went to LSU. Flage was on the sideline from the women's team. Everybody was there for this game, and if anybody has seen the highlights of how that stadium was rocking going into I believe it was into the fourth quarter, that stadium was rocking, and I knew at that moment Ole Miss was going to lose, because that stadium was on fire. It was like a party. It was like a party in that place, going crazy going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I took LSU in this game almost solely based on the home field. I just thought a home team like this home field advantage, one of the very best home fields in all the country, and to be getting points at home, I thought was the right play. Now, like I said, didn't know that it would come down to this, didn't know that it would come down to overtime and be such a crushing loss for Ole Miss. But yeah, that was quite the atmosphere in Baton Rouge. Now, I mentioned it a minute ago. Texas is number one. They stomp Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Look, Oklahoma just isn't where they wanted to be coming into the SEC. They're not a terrible team, but I think there's real question marks around Brent Venables, and if he's the right guy to lead this team into the future, we can talk about that at another time. But look, I've got a prediction for Texas here. I think this team is going to win the SEC. And I think they're going to do it in year one. And imagine if Texas wins that conference. And what if Oregon wins the Big Ten? Because what we saw on Saturday, they now have the driver's seat to possibly win that conference. If Oregon and Texas win their conferences in year one, and this is what we talked about coming into the year, Alex, the realignment and how big this was for college football, and now we are really seeing it. On a side note, I can't wait for that game versus Georgia. I'm sure we're going to preview that one tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? I have another hot take for Texas. I don't think Quinn Ewers finishes the season as a start on this team. I think they go to Arch, similar to Hurts to Tua. I think they're going to move, or Quinn Ewers is going to end up getting benched. More on that later. I just think they're not gonna stick with him. Oklahoma, I absolutely agree. I think they need to get tougher. I know they're competing with Texas for their own players, and it's gonna be kind of tough. But they're gonna have to think outside the box to get some more players if they want to compete in the SEC at the level that they want to be able to compete.
See, guys, this is why you got to stay until the final minutes of the episode, because this is where you get some of the best takes here, guys. And look, if you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor, like and subscribe, rate and review Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP, and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.